It is clear that the House does not support this deal, but tonight's vote tells us nothing about what it does support. Nothing about how or even if it intends to honour the decision the British people took in a referendum Parliament decided to hold.
British Prime Minister Theresa May is heading back to the drawing board. Today, her Brexit deal suffered a crushing defeat in Parliament. 432 against it versus 202 in favour, the biggest government defeat in nearly a century. There are just 73 days remaining before Britain is slated to leave the European Union. Back in 2016, in the 2016 referendum, just under 52% of voters opted to exit the EU. That sentiment has since shifted. About 54% of voters would now like to remain. Ahead of today's vote, Theresa May's Brexit deal was debated 16 times in the House of Commons, and May has lost 9 ministers over it. So what happens next? Is there still a chance that Brexit is delayed or doesn't happen at all? Una Fitzgerald is the Director of International Law Research at the Centre for International Governance and Innovation in Waterloo. Thank you for joining us very much, Ms. Fitzgerald. I just want to ask, how does today's vote change the course of Brexit?
Well, this vote was the culmination of all the effort of the Brexiter, the people in favor of Brexit, over the last 2 years. And they were hoping that this deal that had been negotiated between Prime Minister May and her party and the European Union would be approved by Parliament, that Parliament would have its say and it would approve it, and then we would move on towards the actual Brexit on March the 29th. But this was such a resounding defeat, as you described. So we're now in really uncharted territory. And what we do know is that tomorrow there will be a vote of no confidence that will be debated and then voted upon. And depending on how that goes, there is also a requirement on Prime Minister May to return to Parliament in 3 days to give an explanation of what her plan B is now that this deal has failed. So we have to see how all this plays out. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I sort of have the sense that Humpty Dumpty has fallen off the wall, and we have to see where it's going to land.
I recognize that it's really hard to make predictions in so much uncertainty, but with tomorrow's non-confidence vote, do you have any predictions there as to what we should expect? It's, as you say, it's uncharted territory. What should we be looking for in the next 24 to 48 hours?
Well, certainly that vote will be very important because it could mean that we will be seeing a new government in the UK. So the vote will take place tomorrow night in the House of Commons. And if May loses the vote, then there is legislation that determines what happens at that point. It wouldn't be an automatic calling of an election right then and there. Instead, there'd be 15 days in which the Prime Minister May and the Tory party would try to form a government and get the confidence of the House. If she was unable to do that, other parties might try. So it's the Labour Party that's bringing this motion. So one must imagine that they have some idea that they could form a government if they had the chance. So they will probably try to do that. They don't have enough seats in the House to actually form a majority, obviously, but they might be able to pick up some of the other parties to form a coalition. So if they succeeded in that, then it would be up to the new Prime Minister Corbyn to try and solve this Brexit dilemma. But we really don't know at this point. If neither of them, if nobody can form a government and get the confidence of the House in that 15-day period, then we do have a general election. And that takes up another 25 days. And so we're getting very, very close to the March 29th deadline for Brexit.
That deadline, can Article 50, which for people at home that might not know, it's the process by which an EU member country can leave the bloc. Can it be halted or extended by the UK?
It can be extended by the European Union if they agree to it. And you'd have to have the unanimous vote of all the members of the European Union to agree to an extension. Now, the Prime Minister May could unilaterally revoke the notice that she gave 2 years ago, and that would end the whole Brexit discussion, at least between the EU and the UK. She has given no indication she'd be willing to do that, but that is certainly one of the options. And she could do that unilaterally. She doesn't have to get the consent of the European Union to do that. It's something she has within her power if she is still the Prime Minister.
What are the chances of consent from the European Union when it comes to an extension?
Well, they're getting pretty tired of this negotiation. It's been very, very difficult. And, you know, when she delayed the vote in December and went to discuss it with the leaders of the European Union, they were, you know, conciliatory, but they said they really didn't have much room to negotiate further. And so, you know, they just gave her some comforting words, and here we are today. So we've already heard from Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, that there is not much room, and he's been considering what her options are. But, you know, assuming there is a government in the United Kingdom in a position to express the views of the United Kingdom, I think the European Union would be prepared to discuss it with them and see how they can tweak the deal to try and get consensus. The difficulty is finding what kind of deal can be made, given the very fractious views in the United Kingdom.
Last question. We have less than 30 seconds here, but what is the best outcome here for Theresa May at this point? I realize she's not in a good place. What's the best option for her?
Really, we don't know. I mean, she should not be the Prime Minister who goes down in history as having led to the crash-out Brexit, because that will be a disaster economically and socially for the United Kingdom. The best deal is if she can come to some sort of compromise with other parliamentarians and forge a new path, a new deal. There are other options. People have talked about Norway Plus. Perhaps there's some other option if she speaks to the Labour Party and other members of Parliament. Maybe she can do it.
All right. Thank you very much, Una Fitzgerald. Thanks for chatting with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.